Okay, so to put it this way, minions are the most complex genre of things you can do in Path of Exile. And we are very, very few people in the community that devotes time the way myself and very few select other people do in finding out information like this so that we can supply this to the community. I can count those people on one hand that I know of. We used to be able to count them on two hands. The problem is we've lost so many people. Angry AA, we've lost K Gaming, we've lost Leary93, and I mean, there's like so many people that is gone now. So I can count people that I know that devotes enough time to be able to do these things and understand what the fuck they're talking about on one fucking hand. So when I see someone like this, who clearly knows what he's talking about, I've never heard of him, I'm overjoyed. Because we need people like this because of how complex minion builds are. So yes, I'm very happy that I'm hearing someone say these things and he knows what he's talking about, because you don't hear this very often.
Now, I think these are pretty strong specters, for at least for a support option for many, many minion builds. So now.
So before he continues, like the way I've heard from his descriptions of this and what I've seen so far, assuming everything is tested properly, but I have no reason to doubt that this is not tested properly. I'm assuming it is done properly, right? They seem to be a superior support spectre to that of Pale Seraphim for any minion build that does not apply shock. Now, Guardians will apply shock, so because of that, you'd most likely be better off running a Pale Seraphim instead. Poison builds normally goes Necro, not Guardian, so therefore you get the benefit of the shock, which is better than the Pale Seraphim, and this is without including the addition of the reduced action speed. Now, I don't really care that much when it comes to ramping up the poison, simply for the fact that, you know, there's a cap on it, and the longer I take to get to the cap or get to the maximum amount of poison that my build is able to approve, that means I have a longer ramp up time, and I don't like that because it feels like I'm inflating the damage number, so I will disregard that aspect. They are still better than Pale Seraphim for the sake of damage. Not only is it 5% more damage for you compared to a Pale Seraphim, it's also versus a stationary target 100% uptime, which you can't say for Pale Seraphim at any given time.
I'm gonna do a Maze of the Minotaur run. My build is very inefficient. I'll leave a POB in the description. I'll probably die on the Minotaur boss because I'm not very good at at doing it. So yeah.
Bro, you're using a Squire. I see that. It has nothing to do with being good. You have a glass cannon. But okay. So this is with a Squire. I'm not very excited about the damage output though. 29% quantity shaper map. I mean, this is not a hard rolled map without juicing it. And he's using a Squire for this. Like, the damage is really, really bad. Especially versus this type of content. So no, I don't think that you would ever use these as main source of damage based on what I'm looking at right now. That doesn't mean that they're not good for the sake of utility usage. I want to see the boss fight though.
A projectile when they're a little bit further away from it. If they're up close, they will only be using their melee attack, so that's why.
That's a problem, actually. For him to guarantee, guarantee the shock in that uptime, they need to toss the net. And if they have an AI, which is something we see on other specters like Kitava's Heralds, for example, have that issue as well. That means that for the only way to guarantee the uptime of the debuff is for them to be separated from the target. And they're melee minions. So that's the downside of them. which reduces consistency. As you can see here, there he got the shock. Wait, was that a 15%? No, that's not from that. No, it is a 15% shock, not 20. Why would you say 20? A guaranteed shock. I can see the lightning trap is on the ground, but it's still 15. So it's not 20. It's 15%. Why would you say 20 in the start then? Page not found from that link. Oh, there's a dot at the end. Thank you for pointing that out. Give me a second. Try the command now. Type exclamation mark craft now, Bornbeard. So that's a 15% shock, not 20. It work? It's not in the link? What do you mean it's not in the link? Now it's 20? Sorry, I was looking at chat. Works now? Copy it wrong instead of click. So why would it be 20 all of a sudden now? That's very awkward. Do the net stacks? It seems like they do overlap, but the problem is the shock shouldn't stack now. That's one thing. And crits is not going to happen, because if they crit, then you're talking about the shock being applied based on damage applied to the targets. And the damage applied to the target is not what's causing the 15 or 20% shocks at all. Because then you would see much higher chunks of damage being done to this guy. Might have another source of lightning that applied 15. Well, I saw these ground effects earlier on the target, and I only saw 15. Shock from Tempest Shield? No. None of those would be able to do a 20. Like, you see the shock ground effect here. I'm gonna see the next part here. Now it says 20 again. My only answer is that he must have had another way of applying shock that did the 15. That's the only reason why explanation. There's a raw POB. What else does he have? The shocks then. I don't see any other info that would shock. It's kind of awkward. $20.
Oh, yeah. What do YouTubers always say at the end of their videos? Yeah, screw all that.
Okay.
Ron.
Long time YouTube watcher, first time Twitch lurker. Well, welcome and hope you enjoy yourself. I had a question about one of your builds. I'm playing your Guardian Skelly Mage and currently the lower budget build. In the PoB, it has Defiance, Banner, and Tempest Shield in the aura setup, but on the PoE Vault page, you only have Skitter and Determination in the aura setup. I was wondering if you could explain what Banner and Tempest Shield are used for. Well, the Banner is for increased defensive layers, but so is the Tempest Shield to give you spell block. The thing is, Atomic, is that very often builds gets updated, new tech is found, or different tweaks and changes are made so that the build becomes even better than they originally were posted for. And because of that, it makes it very hard for me to update my build guide videos consistently. So I always tell people to always look at the written guides, because the written guides are getting updated consistently. So for example, something that wasn't in the video but that's been added in the written guide is something like a gear progression page, but the PUB has been updated several times over as well for optimization purposes. So my recommendation is that if you're questioning or wondering why there might be some changes or differences between a video and the written guide, always go for the written guide, because we're updating them on a daily basis. If there's anything changing, we're updating it as soon as we can. You want to add shocks, you will write them? Correct. Yeah, they're not calculated together, like, doesn't matter. The minion attack, well, the thing is, he's not doing lightning conversion on the minion attacks helm. So they're not hitting hard enough to surpass that shock. Any other than the Baron where we can use leech of minions? No. Not that I can think of, at least. Well, I mean, to sum it up, this is a very, very good find when it comes to utility specters for the minion players in Path of Exile. It's a great find. Syndicate Silencer. So here's the funny part. First off, there's no information here that would indicate that these do what they are doing. So the only way we would have been able to find this is if somebody testing them and finding out that, hey, look at this, they're actually doing this, which is not something we can find out on a theoretical information. The thing is, like I said before, is that I could in the past count the amount of people in the entire community that are devoting enough time and effort to finding things like this and sharing that with the community on my two hands. In recent times, we have lost quite a few people. From the streamer world, we've lost things like Leary93, Angry African, as well as K Gaming. And, you know, may they rest... Well, they're not dead. May they rest in peace. They're not dead, okay? They just stopped playing the game for a variety of reasons. But these people were amazing. Like myself, they've been also devoting a lot of time to these things. And we're not very many people left in the community that does this. To this day, I can count the people that are devoting enough time to provide this type of knowledge to the community on one freaking hand. And it's so sad. Uber Elite is another streamer that's in even longer, further back that has stopped as well. Absolutely. There's so many people. So when you guys told me about this guy, Doominated on YouTube, and get a link down in the descriptions below so you guys should subscribe to him. I was like, all right, let's look at this. My hopes weren't that high that this would be good. But listening to what he was talking about, the guy knows exactly what he's saying. And you don't see this very often in Path of Exile because of the simple fact that the minions in this game is so crazy complex. So hearing someone knowing exactly what he's talking about when he's referring to these things was a very, very nice, you know, bit of fresh air, in my opinion. So thanks so much. And I had no idea who this guy was. I don't even know why I don't know who this guy is, because this was perfect. This is such good content, and we need more people like this in the community. So do give him a follow. I'm gonna put this in the Twitch chat here for you boys as well. Do give him a subscription, you know, give him a good comment, because this type of content is something we need more of. So with that out of the way, what he's done is that he has actually playtested the Syndicate silencers, the Surf and Betrayal encounters, and there's a problem with them, which he's covering in his videos with testing, and that is that the Taser Net Mortar ability is a projectile with a on-hit mortar effect, which allows it to shotgun, because mortars have a splash effect, which is a secondary approach to it, which allows them to actually overlap. Now, the really cool thing with this is that there's no information on what it does outside of this. Apparently, like, this is just the casting of it, but there's no info on the hits from the actual net that then exists, unless it's this one, which doesn't tell us anything about a guaranteed shock. Apparently, they have a guaranteed shock application of 20% and a reduced action speed on the target. So what does this mean? Well, it does mean that for the minion builds that don't have an inherent way of actually applying a reasonable amount of shock on enemies, mostly going to Necromancer minion builds and not so much when it comes to Guardians, that means that these Spectres are actually, on paper, better utility Spectres than something like a Pale Seraphim. And a Pale Seraphim, what they do, they are applying with a net Thunder Web. Let's see if I can find it. Thunder Web. I don't even see it. they have a mobility skill that applies a 15% increased damage taken here. Stab web, this one right there. I think it's called Thunder Web, actually. So that reduces action speed and taking increased damage. I don't know exact percent of the action speed. I believe it's 15. Problem with this is that this is a base duration of 3 seconds. But this stab web is from their mobility skill, which I believe we can see right here, that this one has a cooldown of 6 seconds, which is then triggering this, which is why it says triggerable. So this ability does this, which is why it's so messy when it comes to minions. 6-second cooldown, 2-second cast time to have a debuff duration of 3 seconds of 15% increased damage taken. Now the differences between this and the specters shown by Mr. Dominated here with the Syndicate Silencers is that both of these specters are meleeing specters. They have a tendency of going up to the melee range and start swinging at the enemies. And if you look at the HP scaling, 350, 123k at, I don't know, 84, whereas these guys have a significant lower HP, which means that the Syndicate Silencers is actually more reliably staying alive compared to Pale Seraphim, which is a good thing, because Pale Seraphim tends to be the squishiest utility spectre that most builds are using. However, there is a problem, and that problem is the fact that they are having the same problems as minions like Kitava Heralds, among others. Which means that the problem stems around them having too many abilities, and their AI is designed to be in a certain way. Kitava Heralds have 5 abilities if you include the default attacks, and the problem with that is that they will only do certain actions based on their proximity to their enemy targets. And what I'm saying is that the Syndicate Silencers, for them to shoot their projectile, they need to have a distance between themselves and the enemies. This is problematic unless your build is a build that uses Convocation and your main source of damage is not having your specters on the target. So I would not use these for damage dealing. Well, that means that if you're playing something like SRS, for example, specifically Poison SRS, you can use Convocation consistently because your SRS are not going to get convocated. So you have your top damage sources on the targets, and you are consistently convocating your specters away from the target, allowing them to have a higher... their AI is designed to be more likely to cast their mortars if it's off cooldown, which is every 5 seconds, to cast the shock approach with reduced action speed, which has a 10-second duration, which allows you to be in a position to guarantee 20% shock on enemies on builds such as Poison SRS. So what I'm saying is that thanks to Dominated, we have now the option to utilize the Syndicate Silencers as a very, very valuable utility spectre for builds like Poison SRS as an example, whereas it becomes very irrelevant for builds like Zoomancer that has a lot of melee minions that would be convocated, because you can't guarantee the application and the uptime of the mortars to apply that 20% chance to shock, or not chance, but 20% shock value for a variety of reasons, and therefore it won't be that good for those builds, upon which you would rather have a Pale Seraphim if you use that at all, because of the fact that they will actually apply that even if they're in melee range. Same thing when it comes to the comparisons to Guardian minions, where the shock application is mostly done through our actual damage approach of the minion build itself. Therefore, the utility value of a Syndicate Silencer versus the utility value of a Pale Seraphim, for example, would still be better because you're already applying shocks inherently. So therefore, the difference would have to be calculating the shock difference of what you're applying versus the 20% that's guaranteed through those. If you're applying something like an Elemental Guardian SRS, and I would still run the Pale Seraphim because of these things, or even look into something like a Baronite Cleric, which I believe I have in game right now. You see the blue circle here, that's a Baronite Cleric. And my buff bar looks like this, giving me 20% of physical damage, extra lightning damage, and a higher chance to shock. So that's basically the approach to this. So the TLDR, I think that this is great. It works perfectly on builds that specifically do poison damage mostly, and it would work the best on builds where you can convocate the specters whilst the main source of damage you're doing is not being convocated. So that basically sums it up to Poison SRS can utilize this in a very effective way. But I also want to take this opportunity to say that this guy Dominated, I didn't know who it was. Now I do, and thank you so much for your contribution to the community. We need more people like this because we've lost so many over the recent years. So seeing someone come in here and post a YouTube video like this and knowing exactly what he's talking about, it was a very genuinely enjoyable experience for me personally. So again, if you guys haven't seen it, check out his links in the descriptions below. Give him a subscription. You know, give him some props for the work he's put in, because this is something we sorely need in the minion community. That's all I have to say in this video. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more content. I'll catch you guys in the next one. So till then, stay safe, keep rocking.